in Washington is very pleasant. Why? Because the experts who draw the buildings, they provide for parking in that architectural plan. If you're putting up a new building for offices that is going to have 50 offices, why? What stops these people from doing 2, 3, 4 levels? Starting from underground, you can do basement, 2 levels, then another 3 levels above, which are purely designated for parking. If the office block will be serving, for example, 50 offices, you can provide the minimum of 50 parking slots so that the people in that particular building don't have to park in town where they are harassed and so on. Mr. Speaker, some of us, the senators of Nairobi, know that we have certain institutions that are doing something about it. I was last at the Ark Hotel. Is it called, no, is it Marble Ark Hotel. I was there 4 or 5 years ago. And at Marble Ark, they have acquired a parking. So when you go to Marble Ark, if you are serviced, then they stamp your parking slip and you drive out. They assume that because you parked in their parking and you are serviced in their hotel, then they should not double tax you. So they merely stamp it and you go away. They do the same thing at the Norfolk Hotel. This is the innovation that we should put in place. Let me tell you the story of cartels. In Kakamega, for example, a humble, friendly little city in Western, the outgoing governor went out of his way and bought out a 1-story building that was sitting on a fairly large space. And he came and knocked down that story and created a parking, soon I imagine, and is collecting money for himself because it is now his property. It is this selfish thinking in public service. It is this greed for money and more money that is making Kenya very unattractive. Let me ask in this motion, when you ask somebody entering Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, entering Kisumu International Airport, Eldoret, and even Wilson Airport, to pay as they enter, what are they paying for? What are they paying for? You go to Madrid, you go to Barcelona, vehicles that drop public service vehicles are not allowed to park. So what we should be doing at the airport is you come in with your Uber, you enter the airport without paying a cent, the Uber drops you, it leaves without paying a cent. The only time they pay is if they go there to park. This helps traffic to flow, the country to look friendly. You go to Rwanda, Kigali here, a small country, that harassment of pay here, park here, and pay that, and this is not there. We are making our city unattractive so that visitors come, and thanks to us, not everybody who pays is given an acknowledgement. Honorable members, when did you last receive an acknowledgement from a parking boy? You go there and a parking boy comes, and by right you must give him 100 bob. If you don't give him 100 bob, I don't know, I hope none of you has gone through this. If you don't give him that 100 bob, the guy is working with people at City Hall. He then calls them, the ones with this clamping machine. He tells them that come. So before you know it, they clamp your vehicle. It's amazing. Then the parkings which are supposed to be for free, taxi drivers on those parking slots. If you find a parking slot which is empty where taxis preferentially park, They come, they find you are there, they call the people of City Hall, they come and clamp you so that you go and pay. You can imagine somebody in transit coming to do business, bringing money into the country. He has gone to place X, he has parked, and when he comes, he's supposed to go through that long procedure of go to City Hall, come back, pay 800, whatnot. You make the cost of doing business very, very high, and the town becomes completely unattractive. So, Senator Sifuna, me what I think, as I said at the beginning, talk to the governor. If we fail, let's work together as Senate. We make our city decent by cutting out some of these unnecessary charges. I want to end by, there are no visitors here, by talking to ourselves. This is a learning process. Usually, and with all due respect, usually when you're moving a motion and the person seconding your motion, they have to do research so that you raise the interest of the House into the motion. That's why it is called moving. That's why you are given 20 minutes. When you have a motion and you're moving it for 10 minutes, you are not making it attractive. Members are watching from the gallery there, not from the gallery. Members are watching from the other, in the lounge. That is the English word, hallelujah. English is a foreign language to me. So they're watching from the lounge. The moment they see the way the motion has been moved and seconded, then they run back to come and make their contributions. So we want to do that, and I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate Senator Aseka. You can see she has debated this motion very well. I could even think that she was referring to notes, and yet she was just doing it from the reflection of her mind. Thank you, Senator Sifuna. Congratulations. This is your first motion. I can see you're going to do very well. We have had people in this assembly, including this Senate, who've been here for 2 terms without removing a single motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Dr. Boni Halwale. Senator Mondet Batuli Betty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support the motion moved by Honorable Sifuna and congratulate him because it's actually a very, very important motion for the people living in Nairobi and your team in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of parking charges at the essential services areas is a serious one. In fact, to note, and I'm sure Honorable Sifuna will support this, that is the places where they charge most. If you visit a hospital, for example, Aga Khan, on an emergency, as my sister has said, that's Senator Siengo, and it has happened to me also. Mr. Speaker, sir, you'd find that you've just entered that place. It's an emergency. You are not ready for it. Maybe you are kept there for 8 hours or 10 hours, and you are going to pay dearly for those hours. So you wonder, you've left all the money in hospital. There you are, they've levied such a high fee for the time you are there, seeking for their services. So I think this is so timely because as much as we appreciate that it has become a business in Nairobi. And Mr. Speaker, sir, this parking levies has made life in Nairobi very, very expensive. On a bad day, and maybe that's the good day that you've got errands to run in Nairobi where you have to visit several places, by the end of the day, you have paid so much money on parking that you wonder if all Kenyans are paying that kind of money in a month, how much these people are collecting. I would suggest that maybe if we could come up with a legislation where these parking levies are actually leveled, depending on where people are going, depending on the hours people spend wherever they are going, because giving it a free hand, you find nowadays even they don't have that 15 minutes where you used to get that you get the first 15 minutes are free. Nowadays, everywhere you enter, so long as you've entered that parking lot, the minimum you pay is 50 shillings. After 1 hour, it starts climbing up. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it's a point which should be looked at very carefully, especially the essential services area, and the issue also of the airports. Mr. Speaker, sir, the airports like Wilson Airport, just entering Wilson Airport and dropping somebody, it is 200 Kenya shillings. You have to pay that. So as I echo what Senator Senior said there, it is becoming a very unfriendly city because most of the time you land at the airport, you really have to spend a lot of time waiting for a taxi because all the taxis don't want to come into the airport. So the issue of thinking of how they can plan to have a dedicated lane for the taxis or for the vehicles dropping people, I think is time that this is looked into, and so that at least we can help the people of Nairobi, because if you check on how much people are spending, even people who are coming to work to Nairobi every day, and you're spending 300 shillings every day. Mr. Speaker, I think life in Nairobi has become harder, and that's why you find that people find alternatives that, and you know what it means? When people are not busy enough, then they are not generating enough for this economy. So I think this is a timely debate, and it has come the right time. And Mr. Speaker, I'll urge the Senate of Nairobi, since you are in the middle of it, please make it your point to follow the committee, which is going to get this debate, and make sure that at least the people of Nairobi are given that service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support.
Thank you, Senator Monter. Senator Mugatana, Danson Buya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the Honorable Senator from Nairobi in this motion. Mr. Speaker, I think there is a problem in terms of the greed that is there amongst landowners. Mr. Speaker, this motion has not gone far enough. This motion should have gone to call for the total abolition of all parking charges, Mr. Speaker. I say so because, Mr. Speaker, we grew up in this country, and this issue of parking charges in malls, in hotels, in hospitals, it's a new development. Mr. Speaker, when we were growing up, you go to the shop, you do your thing, you go home, nobody would ask you for parking charges. The greed that landowners have nowadays, Mr. Speaker, we must arrest it. And the only way we are going to arrest it is by legislating against this greed. Mr. Speaker, when our forefathers fought for independence of this country, they fought against landowners. And at that time, there were Muzungu landowners. And these Muzungu landowners are still there, except they are wearing black skins, Mr. Speaker. How do you justify? You write a rental agreement with a business owner in a mall. You are charging him, and every year there is escalation of those charges, which are cost. In fact, they have inbred within them the cost of the land which you purchased. Mr. Speaker, why is it that all of a sudden the area that is supposed to help that businessman to do the business where you are already collecting rent, all of a sudden becomes an area where you still want to take? So you take from the guy or the shop, you take from the guy who is having an office there, you take from everybody in that whole shopping mall. Mr. Speaker, it's the greed. And we must legislate against this greed. The people who are owning this land are killing this country, Mr. Speaker. How much are they paying in terms of land rent? Annual land rent that they pay to the Ministry of Lands. The taxation they are paying is so minimal, Mr. Speaker, and it's already covered within those tenant landlord agreement. But they continue to milk Kenyans more. Mr. Speaker, it's a shame. And I think this motion should go further. We should call for the abolition of all these charges, Mr. Speaker. I serve as a commissioner, Mr. Speaker, in the COMNESA Competition Commission. I travel a lot, Mr. Speaker, in the southern part of Africa. There are no parking charges in malls in Zambia. There are no parking charges in Malawi, in Zimbabwe. There is nothing like that. In many parts of Africa, we have been told here, even in Kigali here, Mr. Speaker, why in Kenya? Why in Kenya? Because people are just greedy, and we must legislate against these people, Mr. Speaker. I pray that when we pass this motion, Mr. Speaker, our people are going to be freed from this. The Senate will pronounce itself in this manner, Mr. Speaker, that we will abolish. We are not going to wait for policies and whatnot. Mr. Speaker, what the learned senator from Nairobi needs to do after the resolution of this motion, after we support and we pass this motion, Mr. Speaker, we need then to have a legislation brought on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker. We support it. We force these people to think again. Mr. Speaker, we have voted in a new administration, a government that says is going to help the business community, is going to be friendly to the business community, is going to be friendly to the people of Kenya, is going to be friendly to those who are trying day and night to make a living, the hustlers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been told about the people here who carry people, the taxi and boda operators. Mr. Speaker, even the normal people who have taken loans to buy their cars and who have, emergencies in hospital. Mr. Speaker, imagine if someone has gone to visit a person who has a prolonged stay in hospital. The hospital is making money. They are still making money from this person. Mr. Speaker, it's immoral. We must legislate against this thievery. It is actually thievery. It's actually thievery, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm telling the Senate that it has been done in other parts of the world. The Scottish Parliament, Mr. Speaker, has passed a law to outlaw any charges in any hospital, be it private or public hospital. So we can do it here in Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And we don't have to borrow from those jurisdictions. But just to remind the Senate, Mr. Speaker, even in the UK, Mr. Speaker, they have identified categories of people like those who are disabled, Mr. Speaker, they will not pay when they go for those charges. Those who are caregivers to those disabled people, they will not pay. Those who are people who are working in the national hospital insurance, Mr. Speaker, and hospital workers, they will not pay. If they have been able to categorize and decide which category of people can pay and which cannot pay, Mr. Speaker, it means there is possibility for us to bring legislation that will control this kind of greed, Mr. Speaker. I beg, Mr. Speaker, that in supporting this motion, my learned friend, Mr. Sifuna, I'm the senator for Nairobi, should take it further to bring a legislative proposal here so that we can start dealing with these people who are just stealing from the people of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you very much, Senator Mugatana. Senator Okech Edi Gisheru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that I'm going to be very brief on this matter. The Nairobi parking problem actually indicts the problem between county government and national government. This is a problem that has always increased because of the issue around, are we clear as a nation whether issues of parking are issues of revenue collection or they are issues of regulation of parking in Nairobi? Because when there are issues of revenue collection, that is when the problem starts. Because if you read our constitution, Mr. Speaker, under I think Article 209, Article 209 is very clear that only the national government may impose income tax, value-added tax, custom duties, and excise duties. And this problem of parking in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, comes because of the Nairobi County government. The Nairobi County government passed an act in 2018, Financial Act, that started this kind of revenue collection targets. This year, Mr. Speaker, Nairobi County government actually did pass an amendment bill, I think it was on February 2nd, that imposed some of these ridiculous tax targets. You know, Nairobi County government is targeting to raise about 19.8 billion through that amendment, Mr. Speaker, such that businesses that have got about 50 vehicles capacity are forced to pay up to 500,000. Businesses that have got up to 100 vehicles capacity are forced to pay up to almost 2 million, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Eddie Gicheru, you will have your 13 minutes tomorrow. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m.
Thank you,
Time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 26th of October, 2022 at 2:30 p.m.
That indeed, the movement I started, which was dubbed Youth for Youth, is unstoppable. I promise them that I will convey their hopes and aspirations, and I will show in word and action that the youth represent the very best of our country today and in the future. I will endeavor to expedite action on all fronts to advance the interests of the youth, the underprivileged, and the minority communities. And on that regard, I rise pursuant to the standing order of 52 to make order 52 to make a statement on the matter of county-wide concern regarding the insecurity situation in Samburu County. Mr. Speaker, months ago, Samburu County has been embroiled in bloody conflicts and rising cases of cattle rustling, which has claimed so many lives, including security personnel and local residents, as well as wanton destruction of property. Sporadic bandit attacks in several parts of Samburu County have become the norm, and the county residents are living in total fear of attacks. Mr. Speaker, in a span of just 1 week, a bandit has led the loss of life of 5 family members. Apart from the recent incident that happened in Loibornkare and Kurkur, more people have lost their lives and others are hospitalized. Further, The livestock have been driven down the hills of a common non-bandit territory in Tiati constituency, Baringo County. Mr. Speaker, the government has remained unresponsive, and as usual, it will issue a press statement on operations in the affected area. We are tired of these operations. The conflict has seen more than 4,500 households displaced across the entire county, and these numbers keep rising as more raids are witnessed. Mr. Speaker, I'm calling upon the government to act against politicians and other leaders who incite violence. Already, certain known names and ID numbers have been submitted, but no action has been taken by the relevant security agencies. I also urge security agencies to take a decisive action against the bandits and their supporters as to restore calm in the region. The mere rhetoric from the government officials is not enough to reassure our locals. Mr. Speaker, the situation is bigger than banditry. It is robbery with violence. It is a global syndicate. Because otherwise, how do you explain that people who are dying of hunger, people who are living in abject poverty, can afford to buy very powerful weapons? I am challenging my colleagues on the government side to join us in speaking in one voice to condemn this matter, Mr. Speaker, because our forefathers said that ignorance is a voluntary misfortune. Mr. Speaker, a lie has many variations, while truth has none. The loss of lives, coupled with the raging famine in Samburu County and other parts of the northern region, have become a full-blown disaster, and we cannot afford to bury our heads in the sand. I want to remind the ruling coalition that a bird that flies off the earth and lands on an anthill is still on earth. The problems of the nation must bring us together by all means. And Mr. Speaker, if indeed there are leaders who are bloodthirsty and want the government to deal, we want the government to deal with them ruthlessly, as the President promised, regardless of their being in either part of the political divide. Someone out there is deliberately poking the nose of the administration, and yet no response. A bandit is a criminal and an enemy of the state. The government must ensure that citizens are well protected within their borders. The state must demonstrate its capacity to deal with internal criminals before they can tell us anything about external criminals. Mr. Speaker, the previous disarmament exercise conducted by the government have not been successful because they were uncoordinated in approach. And we saw members of Samburu County surrendering their arms, but our Pokot counterparts were not disarmed. The result, Mr. Speaker, is that not so long ago, the 46 police officers were massacred in Suguta Valley, and police guns stolen, and are still in the hands of these bandits. This has continued to aggravate the perennial conflict in Samburu County. And as a result, mistrust has developed between the people and the very security forces that are supposed to protect the people. The disarmament exercise will likely complicate the current humanitarian crisis in the region, experienced by the sick, the elderly, the pregnant women, the lactating mothers, and students. The conflict continues to negatively impact the lives and livelihoods of the local Samburus, especially the people I've mentioned above, and other vulnerable groups. Mr. Speaker, we have lost a huge number of youth who contribute tremendously to the GDP of this country. The people whom their families depend as breadwinners. Mr. Speaker, due to the grievous nature of and the urgency of the issues I've raised, I request you to refer this matter to the Standing Committee on National Security Defense and Foreign Relations for consideration. But, Mr. Speaker, although the statement is under the Standing Order 52, because of the sensitivity of this matter, I kindly request you to commit this statement to the Committee on Security to investigate, and I'm willing to provide the committee with specifics of areas of focus. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.